All right, we're ready.
We're ready.
All right, a lot of this is me looking at the Mousetrap talk. So I've got it printed off here for reference. I feel a little less, I guess I feel prepared, but not as polished as I prefer to be. So maybe this will turn into more of a discussion. Because some of the thoughts are random. I've got things in my head, but we'll try to communicate it the best I can. If you were there last week, or if you heard the recording or read part of the talk, then where I left off was that in excuse me. In by way of introduction, we read Jacob, the account of Jacob and the sons, and I brought that out to show that there's different ways we can process things that people say, and when we put our own judgments into that, and sometimes you can't help it, right? I mean, we all have this bias going on. But if your bias cannot allow someone else's opinions or ideas to inform you, and if you allow that judgment to bring up, I don't like that guy, I don't like the way he said that, and then that's going to interfere with being able to learn and be open and entertain what someone else may have that could help you. And so the idea behind nonviolent communication
Is that hurting you? No, it's just not.
is
No, go ahead.
It's a way among, there's a variety of different ways. Stephanie is giving a whole bunch of different tools that we can use and apply, and this isn't the only one, but because this is the one I'm very familiar with, then when I heard the Mousetrap talk, it's probably through that lens that I read a lot of that stuff. And if you're more of the what you call a family systems kind of a person, maybe you'd see that in his talk, and maybe that's the lens that you might see it through. So but I love how the nonviolent communication has presented a lot of the material, and so that's the backdrop on. Yeah.
I'm gonna say you don't have to use one system exclusively. So like Dr. Ottison's talk presents a macro scale of how to visualize interactions, but you can still use NVC within that as the how-to when conducting a conversation. The Ottison's method tells you when to have a conversation. NVC tells you how to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So
Having more information
tools.
and more tools is
Seeing the big
can
picture.
be a blessing, right? You can now I can see the world through a Buddhist lens. Wow, that's different. Things fit. That's kind of cool. So
Yeah.
Whatever helps you is what the objective is.
May I have something brief to add?
Sure.
To me, the overall message of the Mousetrap talks, to me, seemed to be just don't use the scriptures to argue.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to be the biggest message to me.
Yeah. Okay. And that stood out. That was a good.
And it lines in perfectly with what Christ said to the Nephites.
Yeah.
Blessed are you if you have no disputes or angrily fighting.
I was going through it this morning and picking out kind of things, doing some highlights, and see, pretty good talk.
Yeah, if you do argue, that's sad, but you better not use the scriptures to do so.
Yeah,
that's what it seemed to me.
So, I threw out the Jacob theme just as a way to look at it and say, are we, try to avoid judging, try to avoid the accusation as much as you can, because that's what kind of trips us up. a lot of journal entries and thoughts have come into this. In Denver's talk, he has made a distinction between persuasion and persuading.
That's interesting.
It's a very fine line.
Some minds don't need to be changed, and
Yeah.
some cannot be changed.
Uh,
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yep,
true.
yep.
There is a difference between persuasion and persuading. We engage in the process of persuasion, but may frequently fall short of persuading. When our efforts fall short of persuading, we have no authority structure that allows us to impose an outcome on others. Failing to persuade
You're nodding.
is to be expected. No artificial deadline that appeals to a vote can ever remedy the failure to persuade. And so I know that in our own local group that we've been discussing some of these things. How can we put ideas in play that allow us to maybe foresee or predict or have a process, something in place so that when we see things happening that have disrupted other fellowships, we want to avoid, right? Is there a way to avoid that without losing a trust, right? So last week's message, I talked about trust, and we gave the example, if you remember, if you've seen Zootopia, the little fox and the
Rabbit.
and the rabbit, and the rabbit carries this fox repellent around, and so if she can let go of the fox repellent, because as long as she kind of has her hand ready for the fox repellent in case the fox might do something, then it's to the degree that you can't let go of your fox repellent, you're going to have a level of distrust built into your model. So is there a way to build into the model letting go of the fox repellent? Well, we don't have an answer, but I don't have an answer, but
Maybe
it's
for every
the
person.
thing that we want to entertain and consider.
Maybe it's something that is different depending on the person doing it.
Yeah. So
Also, I'm having a bit of trouble understanding what's the distinction between persuading and persuasion again?
my own note gives an idea that says, just because I liked making a distinction, persuasion, the attempt to influence, and persuading is actually moving somebody. Okay,
Like
so
inspiring?
So like,
When they change their minds.
right,
because of what you
So-
said, they changed their mind and how they viewpointed
Yeah.
it, but if you're using persuasion, they may or may not change their mind. So you don't have to you don't have to win the argument. You don't have to succeed at persuading them, and you still have used persuasion.
So persuasion,
Is
So-
all on you.
so persuading would be like trying to win an argument, and persuasion is not.
Persuading is successfully persuading, successfully changing their mind about something. But persuasion is the attempt to get your ideas across and
It's reasoning.
communicate. Yes, reasoning.
persuading isn't a bad thing.
No,
Yeah. So often that's what we want to be doing, or that's what we're attempting to
That's our
do, whether
goal.
you want to acknowledge it or not. You're trying to kind of get somebody to, well, can't you see my point of view, right? I'm trying to get you to understand me. Can you get me? And that's not a bad thing, right?
So
Denver
persuading,
said that
it's really the only tool we have, is persuasion.
Right,
And we use other things and we're out of
Yeah.
line.
So
Yeah.
even if someone attempts to see your point of view and even writes it down, doesn't mean they agree with you.
You can understand but not agree with.
Mhm.
There can be a tendency, like if I were to say, oh, I want you to understand my point of view, I'm trying to help you understand. There can be a little bit of an internal tendency, at least for me, to actually, I do want them to understand, but I also want them to agree. So, and I try to be conscious of that, and
But, and we need to get to a point that if they don't agree, we still can be
yeah,
Friends.
good friends or
yeah.
get along okay. That's important.
So I wrote this down to make this easier to remember. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so persuading would be successful in influencing, but it's lower than persuasion, which is just for communication.
What do you mean lower?
As in, even if you influence them to think how you think, you might not agree nonetheless.
I don't think they're lower or higher, it's just.
Yeah, I don't think
an
it's a
outcome.
lower.
They're different. See, once you put the expectation that you must change the other person's mind at all costs,
Yeah.
you are tempted to enter into compulsion and many other, shaming, you name the list. Because if the goal is to make them change their mind, you step out of bounds. The boundary is, I can try to persuade you, but that's the limit of my boundary. So if you look at when Denver realized he was in a council meeting, when he told Christ, hey, I just want to do what you want. Then the shields dropped and he saw himself in a council, and the council was saying, maybe we can work with this guy. And Christ had the duty to persuade the council. He couldn't just tell them, this is my guy, this is what we're going to do, fall in line. He
That's right,
had
that's
the
right.
burden of persuading at that level of a council. So for us to learn how to persuade is pretty important opportunity.
Yeah.
But we have to resist the temptation that's always there, because we want people to resonate and to get, to join with how we think. That's a normal.
I think the natural man wants validation.
Yeah, we love that, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah, I nailed it,
I converted them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's-
right.
So just to go back to my shorthand, so persuading would be successful influencing, and persuasion is just for communication.
Mhm.
And I also have a warning about persuading. Do not see it as winning an argument. Do not see changing someone's mind as a necessity.
Yeah, I like that.
But I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
That works.
yeah.
you're,
the
you're,
goal-
you're,
The
don't
goal
want judgment in
doesn't
it.
have to be persuading.
That's what
The
he's
goal
saying.
is persuasion, that we're gonna use persuasion to
Right.
express.
The goal could be understanding, getting understanding too.
So, I've got the hard truth, and this is just reiterating what the talk was saying. The hard truth, some hearts can't be changed and some refuse to be changed. And that's a fact to accept, not a failure to fix.
Okay.
Very
Okay.
good.
I've got a little note here that the example of the exchange between Moroni and Pahoran at the end of this talk, and he uses a lot of time to actually go through the whole thing and analyze it, is an exercise in identifying facts and assumptions, which is a necessary skill in this communication. And in the back and forth, and it always feels good, when somebody agrees with you, like now we're on the same page. But I always walk away from an exchange where we didn't come together and both parties left the discussion not agreeing, but the bond was still closer because we had the discussion.
See,
So-
that's the experience that I have. That you can have a conversation with a person who is atheist, and you can both respect each other, and you can both love each other, and you can come away from the conversation, even if you don't agree on certain points,
Yeah,
closer than you were before, bonded, and having a wonderful relationship.
Something I've been learning a lot of lately, be it with certain other things I've been learning about, is even though it wasn't said exactly like this is the lesson I took from it. But the moment you try to win an argument just for the argument instead of loving the person, the moment you try to win, you lose.
yeah, yes, that's very true.
Because it's about people and caring for them, not about a silly dispute that might just push people away.
But in order for that to happen, you have to both have respect for each other, and you
Yeah.
have to both come down from your need to persuade them. You need to both just love each other and respect their right to believe how they want. But it's just been incredible for me to see, once you let go of that, both of you, 100%, it takes both. Then you can have a beautiful relationship. But if one of the sides really still needs to persuade the other, then it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, any good strong relationship needs
Sounds to me
respect.
like you're both truly listening to each other.
We are
Mhm.
in that
And
dynamic.
that's respectful. Because everybody's entitled to their opinions and their thoughts.
Yeah, and when we're able to say, okay, well, from the very beginning of the conversation, we say, you're probably not going to convince me. And we're like, okay, that's fine.
Mhm.
And we say, this is it okay if I'm open and honest? And we say, yeah. And you might not like some of the things I say, okay. And then we can have a frank, loving
Then you can be yourself.
conversation. Mhm.
You can be,
Authentic.
as you're journaling, saying your truth. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool.
oh, good grief, the 4 components of nonviolent communication, Ryan, do you remember what those are? Four main points:
Wendy says observation.
observation, yeah, identifying feelings and needs,
And requests.
and then making a request, yeah.
I used to
So,
have a little card about it, but I
Yeah.
gave it away and I forgot to make a replacement.
and so
Okay,
that's
okay.
kind of the point here, is that
You're fine.
the main topic of this.
I need to hold on that. I need to hold on that.
No, he's okay.
Doesn't want to stop
He
scratching.
just doesn't wanna, he's just,
Digging.
yeah, there's something he's looking for. I'm just trying to get him to be calm. And he's calm for a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt. He's calm for a minute and then he's kind of losing things up.
Maybe he needs to understand the difference between a request and a demand.
There you go.
It's really a good request. Is about different.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Oh,
It is.
yeah, it is indeed.
And before you get to that level, because this chapter here that we're discussing is requesting that which would enrich life. But before you get to that point, it's important to understand these other foundational things in nonviolent communication, which involves not judging people and not putting a blame on things. And when you kind of get that into place, and when you can do the Moroni/Pehoran discussion framework and identify what's a fact versus what's an opinion, right? Then when you can understand those things, then you can get to this level where it's important to be able to make a request. You want to make requests. In the book, he gives an example of he's in a taxi cab. Rosenberg is Jewish, and he ends up sitting next to somebody who's making these anti-Jewish statements about, these Jews are kind of ridiculous people, and so his anger is kind of flaring up, like, it's like, wait a minute, you have the audacity to, but then he's able to check in and say, let me empathize with you for a minute. Let me see if I understand what you're saying. Let me see if I can get your perspective. Because I'm not sure I'm clear on what it is you really mean by when you say that, see? And so by being able to get the guy to state his viewpoint openly without being judged by it, then Marshall is able to hear him and clear the air a little bit and empathize. So that's the little trick there, is to empathize with him, not agree. Okay, he's not agreeing with him, but he is trying to see where he's coming from.
Because the more you get the other person to talk, the more
Yeah.
they give you what you need to understand them.
So he's trying to understand his feelings and what his needs are. But then I found this an interesting thing in that conversation that he relates, was that, okay, I would like to make a statement that I want you to hear me say. Okay. And then he's putting something out there for the guy to consider. And then Marshall is saying, can you restate what it is I told you so that I can make sure that you understood me?
Yeah.
And then the guy comes back and says, well, what I heard you say is you don't like what I'm saying and you're an idiot and whatever, right? And he says, it's a good thing I had you clarify that, because that's not what I meant. And let me ask it again. See, so the exchange is Marshall is requesting something that would enrich life. And the important thing for him in that exchange was a relationship. So you don't want to be afraid to not state your thing or ask for someone to kind of restate something to make sure that the communication happened.
Yeah,
Okay.
asking them to repeat what you said back
Yes.
to them in a loving way, that's marvelous to me.
And so that's kind of where you get into this idea of requests versus demands. Imagine I'm at home and I'm telling my boy, for the umpteenth time, the lawn really needs to be mowed, and that is an assignment that I gave you several weeks ago. And it's still, we have this, I could run out there and do it for you, but that's not the point. And so what I'd like you to do, in as gentle of a request as I can make this, is go mow the lawn, right? Take the trash out. This is, you live in this household. This is our home. These are our rules. You should be doing it, right?
Do your responsibility.
Do your responsibilities. We have an expectation. Okay. Well, when he kicks back and says, yeah, but I got some homework due, or my friends are coming over. What's his needs? What's his feelings and needs? He needs, and it's a valid need. I don't want to ignore his needs. He has a real need to bond with friends. Okay?
People need
He
to
has,
know that they matter.
that's a legitimate need. He has a real need to get homework done, or this thing he's involved in. And mowing the lawn is just going to interrupt that. So how do I know that what I'm asking him to do is a request or a demand? Am I asking you, or am I telling you? Sometimes, and see, this is where the line gets fuzzy, and you don't know, I don't know, that I'm making a demand.
Well, so a demand is a punitive outcome. So if a request is simply an ask, and if they don't do it, okay, well, that's fine. But a demand is you punish somebody for failing to comply with what you.
Okay.
In my
Yeah.
Yeah, the demand implies compulsion or risk of punishment if you don't comply, but a request removes that compulsion.
Sometimes we need demands though.
Exactly, and so if you state it as, I have a need for you to do this, or if we state it and acknowledge that we are demanding it, it comes across so much better than if you say you're requesting, but then you're going to punish the person.
It's really demand.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to punish the person for not doing it and you keep repeating yourself that you're requesting, then the other person doesn't trust you because the other person
can
can see
tell.
right through that it's either a need or a demand. And so stop calling it a request.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, if it's a littler one and you're saying, don't go play in the street and they start heading toward the street, well, then you need to grab their arm and not keep them from, because some
Because
things
it
you don't
needs to
want
be a
them to learn
demand.
from experience, right?
Yeah, if it-
I had this happen where, and I understand you have friends and they are going to be coming over and that, and I appreciate that. Friends were important to me and still are, but this has to be done. And it's gotta be done, and I need it done by this time. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then he's gonna say something like,
I said, okay.
yeah. I'm talking about my dad used to say that, not him, but smart aleck.
At the end of the day,
That was good.
where are you driving to? So I know how to
I think that
participate,
the important.
or not go somewhere you don't want to go. Does that make sense?
No, I'm kind of leaving this open as a discussion, and you're right, because, you know, it depends on the age and the situation and what's going
Well, you
on.
can acknowledge their need.
Yeah,
We need to acknowledge that need, but I'm sorry. We've raised a lot of kids and there's times you just don't,
that's kind of why I threw that example out there, because it's tricky, isn't it?
yeah, it is very tricky.
Yeah.
It requires wisdom.
And you do acknowledge their need and their want and their desires, but there are also things that have to be done.
Right.
So,
I
So-
was referring to overall presentation, not to this specific.
Oh,
Hey, Jay.
oh.
Josh,
so-
Mike.
What the objective, what
Okay.
is the objective of the overall
Lesson.
part lesson? Yeah.
He has his hand up.
let's Joshua speak first.
There's another aspect to this, and finding out what someone's needs are is excellent. But I found, in my experience, in many things like you just talked about, a typical teenager has no need to cut the lawn.
Right.
None at all. He has no need to make his bed. It isn't like something that he needs to make his bed on his own need. He is serving someone else's need when he goes out and cuts the lawn or goes and makes his bed, because he could have no need to make his bed at all. And yet many times demands are made, even though you're trying to couch them in language, but in reality, it's you're going to make your bloody bed, or you'll wish you had. And, you know, and so the issue here, I think, many times is no one does anything or feels anything for no reason. There's no vacuum. Vacuum doesn't create this. There's something going on that has that happen. And as a kid, I remember one time my mom came in, and I was always pretty concerned with, taking care of my body and taking care of my clothes and all that stuff. But I would never make the bed. And so she came in one time and said, well, you're a phony, because people will think you're really a clean and neat person and your bed's unmade. And I got in trouble for saying this, but I said, My bed has nothing to do with me personally. And that did not evoke a pleasant response. But you know, I told her the truth, the reality is, and she didn't want to accept the truth. At least the truth as far as how I felt about bed making.
So, and I agree with these comments because
Needs to address that first, so let him.
okay, so where is this whole thing going? Where would we want to end up? And I don't know that I tried to wrap up a whole conclusion, but if you want that now, I guess I'm going to say this is the objective here, because I'm using this Mousetrap talk as the basis for the point that I'm trying to drive home here today. And that is, Zion is not a goal, an achievement, or a destination. And I'm reading this from Denver's talk. It is apparently only possible as a byproduct. There is no precedent that I am aware of where people settled on Zion as a goal to be accomplished and then succeeded. That is because if people think it is their goal, then anything that frustrates the goal is thought to be opposition, needing to be condemned. Fellow believers become opponents to one another instead of being one. The opposite happens. Once sides are taken, each can point to the other as the problem. The other is responsible for preventing Zion. In this fear of missing out on Zion, distress and anger increases, and everyone in your way becomes an enemy. It is an invidious and surprisingly successful way to divide people and create schisms. We go to war against anything seen as an impediment to the goal of Zion. Discussion and resolution are impossible. Instead, the society degenerates into accusing one another of being contentious and the minions of Satan, because contention is of the devil. Where there is finally a society capable of living in harmony with one another, Zion will follow in due course as a natural byproduct of that society. If it could be achieved as a goal at a chosen location, then earlier, better people would have already have accomplished it. Generations have come and gone, hoping to see it return, and have not done so. We are no better than any other failed utopians, and cannot do better than the past failures until we begin to acquire the necessary traits and skills that allow authentic harmony to thrive and grow. So let me hold the thought on the lawn mowing, okay, for a moment. Okay, is there a better way to approach a kid and get him to comply? All right, and I would suggest that the language "get somebody to do something" is a red flag. Yes.
I read recently that one of the best ways to get someone to do something for you is to help them want to do it too. Like, for example, you could pay the teenager to mow the lawn and offer him money or some other reward to incentivize them. Oh, I might not like doing this, but if there's a reward.
Okay, so that's one way to approach it. My hope is to communicate this principle that's being taught in the book. And if we can understand what Marshall is talking about with requests and demands, then my hope is that that will become a tool that could help us navigate the territory of how we choose to communicate with each other. And as we pointed out before, request, okay, so I'm going to make a request But sometimes I don't even know that what I'm doing is making a request or a demand. Okay? And this is where it's helpful when I see the response. And it might not be their response. It might be my own response. Okay? I don't know that what I just made was a request or a demand until they refuse to comply. And when they say, I'm not sure about that, then I'll know it was a request or a demand by the way I react to how they responded to that, what I thought was a request.
Like Dr. Ottison's crossing the line thing, the moment you start having negative feelings, that's a
Right,
red
so
flag.
that could be the little flag that I'm looking for,
After
right?
all, anger is just a signal that something's wrong, and
It's
once you
a
identify
signal.
that,
And yes, you got it, so
So are both requests and demands acceptable?
depends on the situation, I guess.
if you're making,
Is it okay
Okay.
to make a demand?
I would say,
Sometimes.
what I want to say is you want to be aware when you're doing it,
Okay.
okay? And most of the time, making a demand is probably not the best choice, okay? According to nonviolent communication.
Wow, if you're a teacher and you don't make demands, what's gonna happen to your class?
Yeah, I pretty much have to.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying you can't and that you shouldn't and that there's not situations, but I'm saying according to this model,
Right,
it's good to know when that demand is being made. You've
exactly.
got to know what it is you're doing and be aware of it. And sometimes what we want to train ourselves to do is to become aware when we're doing that thing.
Right,
Yeah.
so I was looking for a slide, because I just went to a 2-day training, which was phenomenal and amazing. And you can look at things from different perspectives. And so one of the very last things that was presented was that there's a school in, I believe it's Arizona, that took away all extrinsic, like what you're talking about, motivations. And shifted the kids. It was a counselor, and I wanted to find the slide to show you how to shift from here to the next step, to the next step, to the next steps. And one of the steps was doing it because it is aligned with who you are. And one of the steps was doing it because you love it. And it's taking you away from all the treats, taking you away from all of these outside influences to the inward reasons for wanting to do things. And my first response was, oh my goodness, that would be crazy. And I had to kind of look at it and kind of digest it for a minute and look at it from all the different perspectives. What would my principal think about this? What would this behavior lady that I was working with think about this? What do I think about this? All the different things before just jumping into something and going, okay, is there a time when this is valuable? And is there a time when I need to use extrinsic rewards, external, sorry.
Yeah.
And looking back at my behavior student and going, would it even have been possible at all to do what they're suggesting, And so it's just really, really interesting. Sometimes there's a time and a place.
Yeah. And he actually does address this in there. There's sometimes there's a forceful thing needs to happen. But that's starting to get a little bit beyond where I
know
trying to go. And mostly what I want to try and communicate today is to become aware of this principle so that by being aware of it, we can begin to look at it and say, oh, what can I apply that? Can I utilize that? So the important thing is to be able to say, am I making a request or a demand? If it is a demand, then the person
They can tell.
has one of two options. They can comply with my demand, or they can rebel. Okay? So what you've done by making a demand is you push somebody into a corner where they have two options. I can comply or demand or rebel. That's all I've got to work with because he's making a demand. No one likes to be bossed around, okay? And so you can almost hear the internal dialogue going on in somebody's head. Are you asking me or are you telling me? Because if you're asking me, I might consider it. If you're telling me, no way. Forget it. That's how I respond. Well, you telling me? So, but are you asking? All right. So sometimes, again, I may not even know I've made a demand until they push back. And I say, well, if you don't, then I'm going to impose this punishment and all this, da 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 da. Okay. Now I begin to realize, oh, what I just did was make a demand. Okay. And what the tool is suggesting is if you can put yourself in that frame of mind, you want to empathize. Okay. You're telling me that your need is to have friends over. Dad, you've always said it's important for me to bond with friends, right? You've always accepted that if I think that's a real need of mine, that I have needs and they're valid, right, Dad? And I want to say, yeah, I do acknowledge that, okay? I also have a need, and I want you to understand what my need is for order. There's a list, right? There's lists. There's things you can pull off of. Sometimes I have to actually say, hold that thought for a minute. Let me grab my list because I'm looking for a word and it's not on the tip of my tongue. Oh yeah, here's my little list, okay? And it's helpful. And don't be afraid that if you need to refer to a list as you're trying to learn this process and learn this tool, that I've done that before. I've had to sit down with Kyoko and she's working with her dad and there's some tension over some little thing that they're having this issue over and they're grappling with and I'm telling her, well, are you making a request or a demand of your dad? And she says, well, you can't have it like that. Well, then it's then you're making a demand, then aren't you? Well, she says, well, yeah, what's his needs? Okay. And so the question would become, it's to recognize that other person there in this interaction is just as real of a person as you are, and they have just as real as feelings and just as real as needs as you have. Okay. Is he using that as a stupid little card to play down? Oh, look, I want, you're telling me friends are important, Dad, right? Is he using that as a manipulation tool?
Yes.
He could be. But if I can really sincerely get down to trying to identify, I really want to understand what your real need is.
And hey, he could try to manipulate because he has that need.
He can't.
Yeah,
But is
that
he
gets
using it
confusing.
because he's
Yeah.
manipulating, or is he using it because you really did identify the real need? And that's the point, I think, that we want to get in and say,
Okay.
if I understand you and I'm treating you like a real person and I accept you and we're trying to meet here where we are, is your need to have bonding with friends more important? Does that take precedence over my need for order in my house? Okay.
A lot of the times though, you can get both of those needs met. It's something else that's getting in the way.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of time to have friend time and mow the lawn.
Yeah.
What else is actually the real thing that's getting in the way? Is it computer games? Is it something else? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So getting to the root of the real problem is half the battle.
Yes.
Some are just lazy.
and some are, yeah,
Let's just face it.
well, what could be,
Some.
but that, nonviolent communication, if you were to look online and find some YouTube videos, and there's really a lot of helpful examples. And in his book, he gives some helpful examples. And I've had to read the book several times. I've listened to it several times. I've had to, you don't get this material without practice. Okay, you have to actually practice. But when you get some practice in, then you're able to start identifying with people, and really, as long as there's a wall, you're not communicating, you're not going to get through. So part of it is to try and lower the wall and say, I really want to get you. Okay, I really want to understand where you're at. And when the other person understands that you're sincere, then walls can drop and communication can happen.
And helping them to understand their needs and help them get them.
Yeah. But as long as I'm saying, how can I get you to do this thing? Then that's a wall there, see? So
you said can, it doesn't necessarily mean it will. Because if it's one-sided and one person is willing to see the other person's perspective, but that person is not willing to see or even see your perspective, they're not even willing to write it down, not necessarily agree with you, but not willing to write it down. And there was something else I was going to say, but evidently I'm not supposed to because I can't think of it right now. Then it can be just one-sided, that you're willing to see their point, they're not willing to see your point, and you're not necessarily going to make any progress.
Yeah, if you don't see their point, so how does the lawn get mowed? If they don't see your point, how does the lawn get mowed?
some minds, let me remind you, some hearts can't be changed and some refuse to be changed.
But the lawn still needs mowing.
Okay,
So I'm gonna turn.
and that's a
I'm gonna
fact.
become violent, yeah.
That's a fact to accept, not a failure to fix. So in the movement among a community of equals, sometimes you just need to accept that we have to leave it there. Now, in my household, do I leave it there? I might have to impose some things, okay? Right? I might have to enforce a boundary. But
so basically among equals, so there can be definitely a time and place for demands, right? But among equals, a request is probably better than a demand.
Demands are great for matters of physical safety, I think, but outside of that.
Yeah,
So you take the workplace. Okay, you have a supervisor, you have a boss.
And then they're not equals.
But you understand that situation.
Yeah, just like my
And
classroom,
you expect to be told what to do and you expect to do it. And that's your job.
because they're not.
So there
equals.
are situations that are different.
So if you go back to the last line of what you read for my question, that kind of clarifies the use of this. The tools and skills. So what this is about is tools and skills to properly work together in a community setting.
True.
But our discussion is about an internal family scenario, which
Is different.
I have a hard time unpacking. I'm looking at the war in heaven and trying to decide, well, where does nonviolent communication come into this?
Then again,
I'm trying to find out what are the scriptural basis for
Exactly.
these tools and processes that are being presented. I have to do that to be true to myself.
yes,
If I can't find them utilized across the board, then you know, either it's missing or it's been removed or warped, you know, but it should have multiple witnesses. So, but I think having tools and skills to get along better in a community, that's pretty worthwhile.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're not the same thing though, because isn't the family a mini community?
Mm,
Well, that, you know, we'll spend a whole bunch of time on how family dynamics should or shouldn't be, and we won't really get
no.
very much of where Jay wants to go with that.
So if it's minor, if we're talking about minors, it's not, it's intrinsically hierarchical. I mean, to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Because they're a minor.
Yeah, they're not equal.
Now, but if
Yeah.
they're adults in the home, that's.
Then it
different.
changes,
Then it
right?
changes.
Yeah.
Well, it changes dynamically, because just using Ryan for an example, as Ryan was a child, he was so different than how he is now. Now, and not every adult son is going to be like Ryan. I acknowledge that, okay? But I only have to ask him, will you please? And then immediately he will do it. It's not the same as when he was a child.
We need to clone Ryan.
And he wants to help me.
Just in line with who he is.
Yes, because it's in alignment with his transformation, his desires, everything has changed about him, so that now he's happily willing to go mow the lawn. He's happily he might not have done it on his own at the same time I want him to, but then if even if he didn't do it the first time, the second time I ask him, he's like, oh yeah, I was gonna go do that. And he goes and does it. And it might not be immediate. He might say, I'll do it at this time, Mom, so you'll know I'll do it by this time. And then he does, and he'll put a reminder on his phone and all of that. So who the person is matters. If they are more of in the teenager or the child, then it is the hierarchical. But when they decide that they're going to be a different person, then the whole dynamic changes.
And it's also about the agreement of how we run in the home, right? Ryan's agreed that, okay, my job is mowing the lawn, and that's my job. That's how I contribute in the home. And so that's okay because we have that agreement.
Yeah, because he feels, again, that he's doing something that is worthwhile, and that he's making a contribution, and that he's happily doing that because he can see what we're doing for him. And so it's an exchange, but it's happy. But
Yeah.
not every interaction with every adult child is that way.
The win-win in agreement.
Yeah, I mean, even some business interactions, I mean, there can be both people doing something for each other. And some of those can be happy situations, and some of those can be very begrudging. But
So-
One last thing before we move on, it also helps very much that my overall goal in life as a whole is to serve God by serving his
Yeah.
people. That's my dream goal in all things I do.
I want to pull this back to last week's discussion on trust. Because if the other person senses that I trust them as a person, if I trust you and trust is there, then I want to be able to trust that that I'm making a request, I'm really making a sincere, honest request. I mean, there's another, I can pull up examples that he's got in the book. But when the person recognizes that trust is there and I'm making a request, I'm going to trust you to make the best decision. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know how much I intended, how far to get. Just seeing the humanity in other people and willing to trust them. If what I'm doing is actually making a request, then I'm not going to demand you. I'm not going to say, you have to do this. I'm just going to say, I'll leave it there. I'm gonna recognize that we can part ways and still be okay. It's just the trusting in the fellow brother and humanity is going to go a long way in helping us bond, which is, I think, what the goal that God is trying to help us see to attain the thing that we hope to attain. Doug, you had some.
I just gonna comment that, going to persuade, Denver has put it another way. If people's fundamental definitions and assumptions are radically different, there can be no productive discussion. You can understand each other, but you will never agree.
And it's okay to not agree, but to be understanding.
Something I've been learning a lot lately is that even if you fail, that still means you learned something and came out with something good. Because this fun little quote says you're either winning or learning. And because failure can help you learn and improve in everything you do.
That's true. That's true. Sometimes we learn best when things don't go how we wanted.
Yeah.
A few highlights from the talk. He's talking about there were two viewpoints, and you can apply that to either the Women's Council or the guidance standard. Usually you end up with some viewpoints. In this case, it abruptly ended with a vote that as a byproduct confirmed the women's voice in favor of no longer discussing difficult issues. That, of course, is a product of misunderstanding our duties to one another. I'm just highlighting some things that stood out to me. Okay. Sometimes it's not the outcome that we're looking for. Sometimes the objective, the intention is that we were supposed to learn something in the process. Did we learn that something in the process?
And of course, avoiding an issue doesn't mean it's self-resolved or helped. That silence can become deafening.
At a certain point, though, when you know the other person is not moving, there's nothing else to do.
Just
That's right.
other than to let it go.
Sometimes, and that's what I think that's part of the point. Why
Right.
you
and
can't
that's
you
not a
can't
bad
change
thing.
it, so you just say, well, here
Okay.
we are.
Then you can leave it up with, I respectfully disagree, but we can still be friends or something.
Otherwise, it would continue on forever, making no progress.
And just having lots of feelings, lots of
Anger.
Yeah, just leaving it up with, I respectfully disagree, and
So
at least
here's,
leave it on a good note.
To Ryan's point, we, like the devil, use scripture to support our side of an argument when the intent of the material we quote was only to help us measure our own behavior, right? Failing to persuade is to be expected. No artificial deadline that appeals to a vote can ever remedy the failure to persuade.
The beauty of persuasion and persuading is it's not guaranteed to work.
It won't always work. I'm just reviewing some of the notes and hitting some highlights of things that stood out from the talk as it may relate to the principles that I saw in the nonviolent communication. If you can think of a person or people you blame the most for preventing us from achieving Zion, then you have identified who you need most to learn to love.
That's a hard thing.
Yeah, and coming back to the idea of, okay, so as a group, let's see, my notes, did I make, I don't know that put it any better, but,
Sermon on the Mount says to love your enemies.
can a vote be used as a means that a group uses to impose demands?
No,
Is this a question of can or should?
yeah. That's correct.
So it's a question, I'm throwing it out there, right?
Read your question again, please.
Can a vote be used as a means that a group uses to impose demands? The result is the same. Those imposed upon have only two options. They can comply or they can rebel.
So is this bad?
Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I'm
I
gonna
mean,
leave
if
that.
you
I'm gonna
decide-
kind of leave it out there, but it's,
What
If you
happened,
want to
in-
leave the group, you've decided the group's not a good fit for you, so that's.
what happened in the war in heaven is precisely that, right?
Yeah.
Lucifer was given a really hardcore option and he made a choice. So there's an end of nonviolent communication. There's a fullness that once reached, it turns to expulsion, being cut off. I'm just trying to figure out, like, it seemed like that talk in Denver's mind, we fell short of reaching that level, whereas other people in their minds, they felt like they exceeded that level. How do we come to a oneness of that? Is that
Because-
fair?
because even in our own little local group, you're gonna face issues when you have a vote. Okay, I guess here's a real life example. I still feel some angst about those who imposed a lot of nonsense on me through the whole COVID thing. I would hope that over time that people would recognize that, okay, we did some stupid stuff in COVID. I don't want to repeat that, right? I don't want to have a repeat.
Yeah.
Did we learn some lessons through that
No.
or not?
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's a good example
No.
to use or not,
But it's a
But-
good example.
but I see, I don't want to repeat things, and sometimes the majority's not in the right, and sometimes the minority still has a point
Yeah.
that needs to be discussed and considered and entertained.
So I don't want to derail any of this, but I'm just gonna throw this little piece out for people to think about. One of the things at my training they talked about was what would the world look like without friction? And if you have no friction, you cannot walk. If you have no friction, you cannot pick things up. So I'm not saying that the people who are doing things that drive you crazy, you should automatically just love them, but maybe Jesus is. But it's just food for thought that what would happen with no friction. And sometimes when we look back after an experience that we hated while we were going through it, we can look back and say, I grew. We can look back and say, this piece right here that I never would have gained this if I wouldn't have gone through that.
Well, like I said, it's just opposites, there is no existence.
So anyway, I think that's good. So are we at a wrapping up point?
We are.
Okay.
So that's the material. That's my review of the talk. And I don't know that we have answers, but I think as a fellowship, we are entertaining, grappling, wrestling with some of these ideas as we move forward in in our business meetings and stuff. And so there are things that I was hoping to communicate, and if we can base some things on principles that that help us navigate that tricky territory, maybe we can let that motivate us and help us. I mean, was I able to kind of communicate some things, hopefully?
Yep.
All right,
I got one last thing to add.
yeah,
Letting people know that you matter to them, buoying up their self-esteem, letting them know you care,
Yeah,
that goes a long way.
Letting them know that they matter to you, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Cause helping people know that they matter and that you care about them, that buoying up that self-esteem can work towards a lot of goodness.
yeah. Okay, well, we've hit probably some good time here, and I'm
You
done
better
with my
hurry up and get
comments
over
at
there
this
and have some dinner. We can't stay too
Yeah.
much longer.
point. Okay, all right, well,